Okay, so hello everyone, welcome to our webinar. Today, my name's Amy Hatton, I'm hosting today. Now we're just going to give it a couple of moments to make sure that maximum delegates are able to join. And I'm just going to take the opportunity, please just bear with me while I just check with tech support in the background that I'm sounding okay. We haven't got any sound problems or anything like that. Okay, so I think we can get started. Hi, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this webinar today, hosted by PM Today with myself, Amy Hatton, in partnership with Mail Manager, part of the Arup group. It's lovely to have you all with us today, wherever you might be in the world. Thanks for taking the time to join. And we're going to be talking about a topic that is actually particularly close to my own heart and my own professional background, and that of course is rework and the cost of ineffective communication. Liam's with us here today. We can see that he's lovely to see that you're in a busy office actually today, Liam. Great to see you back in the thick of it. And of course that for me actually highlights one of the issues around email communication, ineffective communication, particular pain points I think for all project managers. You of course are lucky enough to be in the office today, but we are moving into a world of hybrid working, which of course makes the whole communication chasm even more difficult to manage. So hopefully we're going to get some insights into that today. And I will introduce you all to Liam properly in one moment. But before I do, just a word on housekeeping, if I may, the obligatory housekeeping announcements, just to confirm that this session is being recorded and there will be a recording available afterwards. So if you do have any technical problems, you drop out, or worst case scenario, one of us drops out, please do stick with us. If you need to talk to tech support, you can do so using the chat function in the Zoom window, and tech support will do their best to help you, and we will email you when the recording is ready. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. We're really keen to have your questions. We'll get through as many of them as we possibly can, and you can send questions through at any time using the Q&A function in the Zoom window. If you're having any problems working out how to get your questions through, again, just pop a chat through to tech support and they'll be on hand to help you. So that's the housekeeping out of the way. Let's move on and have a look at what we're going to cover. I'll be introducing you, as I say, to Liam in a moment. We're going to be looking at the current email landscape, and this is particularly fascinating for me, being of a certain age, that I can remember email actually entering the workplace and being the most exciting new tool on the planet. It's incredible to see the way that it's evolved over the last 20, 25 years or so. And actually a really, really important point when it comes to managing communication effectively. We're going to be taking a look at that and looking at how clever email management and complete email management can help you to avoid rework, again, a particular pain point for all PMs and PMOs. We're going to be looking at the very, very important issue of how effective communication can improve key stakeholder management, engagement and decision making. Then Liam is going to introduce us to the practicalities of how that can work with a system like Mail Manager. And he has very kindly, very much tailored what will be a very brief demo to the PM audience and to PM pain points. So it will be very relevant to all of us, I hope. Then we'll move to the Q&A and we'll get as many of your questions in as we can. So let's meet our speaker for today. I think you all know me. I'm Amy Hatton. I am, as you know, the Associate Editor of PM Today, the leading and only independent publication for the UK project management industry. I'm also what you might call an accidental project manager with some 25 years of experience, ranging from the very good to the extremely not so good. And I have a special interest, having also operated as a non-executive director and chief executive, in the question of communications between leadership and project management. And I'm joined by Liam, who is a senior client manager at Mail Manager. Mail Manager, of course, is part of the Arup group. And Liam spends all of his time helping businesses all over the world solve their email management. Just to say a word about Mail Manager. Mail Manager is, interestingly, an internally developed email solution developed by Arup to help their own project managers solve their own headaches. So we're going to be hearing something about that later on, and I think it's an interesting perspective on the software solutions market. Liam, hi, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thanks, Amy. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. And as I say, great to see you operating in a thriving environment there. Lots of people getting their own lunch, I see in the background. So thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to hand over to you to kick off, and I believe we're going to do just a quick poll of our attendees just to see what the general feeling is on some key pain points.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you very much. So, I mean, to start with, we would just like to do a quick poll, really, just to understand, exactly why you attend today. It'd be great to know if it's maybe you're reviewing IT systems, looking maybe happy with your current process, or even just hearing how other businesses are managing their emails and maybe seeing what your competitors are up to, or just in the market in general. Or of course, it could be a case of the fact that you're struggling with email, or maybe in the middle of a bit of a dispute and having to go back through the discovery and finding information. And equally, it could just be an interest in Mail Manager in general. So I'm just going to launch that poll now, if you wouldn't mind filling it out, and then we can go over the results. Just give it a minute or two to get those in. Okay, brilliant. Yeah, some interesting results coming through. I'll just give that another 20 seconds or so, and then
Yeah, sure. And then we'll take a look at what people have to tell us.
Okay, perfect. So hopefully everyone can see the results there. I can see about nearly 75% of people looking at how other businesses are managing their emails at the moment. So it's great to see people taking interest in that and wanting to see what's out there. As well, 15% struggling with emails themselves, or perhaps in a dispute, and then a couple more either reviewing their IT systems or interested in Mail Manager. So yeah, great to see there's a nice kind of variety across the board. Just going to stop sharing that now. Brilliant. So what kind of are the challenges that are facing project teams at the moment? I mean, it's definitely no surprise that with everything going on in the world right now, and teams, as Amy kind of touched upon earlier, either working remotely or in a hybrid work environment, that it has become more difficult to access that project information. Days unfortunately are gone, or at least limited, where you can turn around to the desk next to you and just ask your colleague to help you find an email. And I suppose what this means mainly for a lot of people is that they don't have access to the information they need, or maybe we're even just left out of that communication loop. And it's definitely a big problem. With over 319 billion emails sent and received every single day, email is still by far one of the most used communication and collaboration tools in many industries. And it's one of the things that most people manage differently, and that definitely creates kind of huge risks for the future. When it comes to risks, one of them comes in forms of project rework, as we spoke about earlier. It's a recent study actually by Geneca found that 80% of project professionals spend half of their time on rework, and poor communication costs around $62 million every year on average, which is a huge chunk. And reworks, unfortunately, don't just waste your time and money, but actually cause huge communication breakdowns within your team and within your senior executive teams and stakeholders.
And from the poll that we've just seen, I think we can see that some of our delegates are quite possibly in that kind of situation at the moment.
Certainly, yeah, it definitely seems that way. And as I mentioned, rework can greatly increase the costs associated with a project, which in turn impacts your project's performance and overall value. And by reducing rework, we've seen project teams are able to kind of quickly increase their productivity and reduce project delivery costs. So, of course, when it comes to technology, it's having a massive impact in the way we work and manage projects, as you've probably already seen in maybe your own companies over the last 18 months, and kind of having the need to do that. And the good news is it's never been easier to keep track of commercially sensitive information. If you have the right tools and processes in place, it's something that we now have the ability to do. So when it comes to this communication chasm that we're talking about, I say a growing communication chasm is having a negative impact on the relationship between the PMO community and their senior executive teams. Executives, directors, and stakeholders are continually frustrated when they're not kept in the loop and don't know the status of a project. And more often than not, this is about the fast discovery and the information they actually need. Most of the information is buried in emails or document management systems in large reporting packs. Additionally, with inconsistent information filing, the information they want is often incomplete. Now, this continued failure to provide execs with what they want or how they want it is hindering their ability to add value to the business. And more concerningly, it is negatively impacting execs' perception of the value generated from the PMO and project management community.
I think that's absolutely right, Liam. And if you don't mind me coming in on that, a couple of things that occur to me from some editorial work I've been doing in this area recently. Here's a statistic for you when it comes to decision making. Scrum Inc. discovered in research in 2020 that when a decision takes more than an hour to make, this is particularly in an agile environment, that can reduce the chances of project delivery success by 40%. So it's not just about getting the right decisions, it's about getting the right decisions in the right time scale. And what you said about the relationship between the executives or the sponsors and the PMO, that really resonates with me, because I've actually been on both sides of the coin. From the point of view of the PMO, if you can't get decisions made because communication is not effective, that's incredibly frustrating, because you're effectively paralyzed, aren't you? You can't move forward, you haven't got the decisions that you need, and you also can't get risks and escalations dealt with quickly, and that's really, really tricky. And from the executive perspective, for those of you on the webinar today who are sitting in the PMO seat, from the executive's perspective, it's incredibly frustrating when you are presented with information. You don't, of course, have the specialist outlook of the PMO. You're not on the front line every day. What you need is access to the right information that you need to make the decision you're being asked to make. And Liam, you've mentioned, you know, lengthy board packs, the embarrassment of being in a meeting and asked a question and nobody can answer it. Next thing you know, there's an argument going on around the board table. Nobody's getting the answers they need. It's a disaster. And that's what leads to this disastrous statistic that, I mean, 80% of PMs spending half their time on rework. That's really not on, as far as I'm concerned, it's bordering on farcical. So we really do need to address it. And I think you're going to give us some views around how that can be done.
Exactly. And when it comes to management in 2021, as we mentioned, things are changing. It all kind of begs the question: how can the PMO community better manage their commercially sensitive information that's spread across inboxes? Being able to efficiently capture and manage all correspondence and making that information accessible to all, so no one is left out of the communication loop, is vital to avoiding delays, reworks, and project risk. As you can see on the screen, when project information management is done well and excels, there's plenty of benefits. And in our experience, email is usually the missing piece to this puzzle. For example, documents are typically managed effectively by most businesses, but critical formal correspondence, which is done via email, is usually forgotten. While some project teams diligently file all their important project emails, others don't file any. And I'd kind of urge you to ask yourself, how do you manage your biggest communication tool?
Well, and I think that's an important point, Liam, because, in this day and age, we all talk about a single source of truth and joining our systems up and integration between all our different systems. And there's so many incredibly sophisticated PPM tools out there on the market. And yet, that statistic, 319 billion emails sent and received every day, we're still defaulting to email as our main communication tool. And in fact, the reality is that is a disparate system in itself. It's testament to, I think, to how human behavior and human psychology works. You default to what you feel comfortable with, and it only becomes a problem when it becomes a problem.
Exactly. It's very common. And I suppose in terms of what we were talking about, these are kind of, it's, I suppose, time to avoid these usual email headaches. And I won't read them all. I'll just kind of read the ones that we hear quite often. One certainly is, I wonder if we've sent that. That happens all the time, trying to maybe going through discovery and making sure that you have even sent an email just for your peace of mind. Again, similar to when someone needs information before a meeting, as we were saying earlier, when those execs are needing that information quickly, and being able to do it in a timely manner is becoming increasingly more difficult if you don't have something in place. And I'd say for the last one I'll read out, and this is one that I hear the most, is John has left the company, so I'm coming in a bit cold to this. And that is something that we find all the time. When information is stored in an individual's inbox, perhaps there's no sharing within the company, and they just can't find that information easily.
And if I might jump in with one more that always makes my blood run cold, that age-old question, whose fault is this problem? Who's caused this? I think there is a huge issue here around communication and accountability. And again, for those of you amongst our delegates who are representing, and I think most of you are PMOs or are project professionals in some capacity, you will know that when it all goes wrong and when that project doesn't deliver, you're having to explain why you're over time, why you're over budget, why you're having to rework things. It is going to be you that is in the firing line, and it is not a pleasant experience, and it can be so very different. You can have your time to shine as PMO, or you can find yourself in the firing line because you are not able to demonstrate that actually this problem was beyond your control.
Exactly. Brilliant. So now I wanted to kind of move on to, I suppose, the story of Mail Manager and how it actually came about. So for those of you who perhaps haven't come across Arup before, Arup is a multidisciplinary engineering firm. We're headquartered here in London, but we do have offices all over the world. With some of our, I suppose, more well-known projects I've put on the screen now. We've got Sydney Opera House in Australia and Queen's Ferry Crossing as well in Edinburgh. But Arup actually built Mail Manager around 10 years ago internally. And the main reason was that we just had no control over how our staff managed their emails. We did have some processes in place. We tried things like public folders, project email addresses, manually dragging and dropping to the server. But the problem was all of those processes relied on the individual to remember to do it, and in turn decide on what is and what isn't important, which just didn't always happen. And really the two main issues we had was people just didn't have up-to-date information on their projects as a whole, especially as we mentioned just a second ago, if maybe someone was new on a project or even someone had left the business. And another big thing was risk. For us, we had to retain data for up to 14 years after a project is finished in case of any claims of litigation. There was a chance we could go back and find that data, but it would always be extremely time consuming to do so. So really, sorry, Amy, we can.
I'm so sorry. I just wanted to jump in with a question there. I do apologise. I just find it really interesting, actually, that Mail Manager has been developed as a response to an internal problem, rather than, let's bring something out commercially and bring it to market. And I think that's very, very unusual in the software landscape. And the reason it interests me is because it suggests to me a different motivation that lies behind the development of the tool. You're developing it not to make money, but to solve a problem internally. I mean, was it always your intention that you would develop it as a larger project that would eventually come to market and integrate with other PPM tools and that kind of thing? Or did that just kind of emerge organically?
It's the latter. So really, at first, when we had this issue, we wanted to go out and find a system that would allow us to get project teams to find an email across the projects within just a few clicks, but take away that time spent filing as well as the reliance. But actually, after trying a few systems off the shelf, we couldn't find anything that allowed us to do that. So given the size of our IT team, we wrote our own system. And as you were saying, Amy, the final piece of the puzzle, I suppose, is that it wasn't ever meant to be sold. It was just made for internal use. However, it was, I'd say, probably over the last 5 years now, Arup noticed there was a lot of interest in product email management, particularly with firms that they had worked with, that had seen it in site meetings and so on. So that's when they actually decided to make it a commercial solution available to other businesses.
Okay, thank you.
So I suppose in terms of the common problems we hear from our clients when it comes to email management, similar to what we've been saying before, mainly a risk of losing sensitive information, which is increasingly happening all the time, as well as that time spent filing and searching, which is the main issue we had. We had that risk, but also it was taking our PMs and fee earners a serious amount of time to find that information when they did need to come across it, as well as that lack of control. People not filing in a consistent manner, everyone's doing it differently. So even if you could find that information, while John might file it one way, Sarah's filing it another, which makes it extremely difficult. And as well, that information locked in people's email inboxes. So if someone did leave the business, it was extremely hard to find those emails that were there.
Well, I think that two things that jump out at me there. One is your comment about, John and Sarah filing their emails differently. I think we have to be realistic again about coming from my special interest and perspective in behavioural management. You're never going to change that simply by asking people to do things differently. Email is such a naturally integrated part of our lives now. It would be like asking somebody to sit and have a conversation in a different way. It's just not going to happen. That's not how human nature works. So a different solution has to come into play. And I think there is one issue, speaking from personal experience here, that I would add to this list. You've touched on it perhaps, and that is the difficulty of resolving problems when you have a legacy issue in play. I'm reminded, for example, of my own time running international development projects. We had one really quite horrendous situation where we had raised funds to set up a large medical facility in a developing country. It had all been done, it had all been set up, it was all running, and all of a sudden we found ourselves in a land dispute. We discovered that the building that we thought we owned legally was not owned legally. Obviously, I won't mention the organisation. It was resolved in the end, but that kind of thing, especially for a not-for-profit, can cause serious reputational, legal and operational damage. And the problem was that we could not get a legacy trail of who had said what lawyers had been involved, etc., etc. It was an absolute nightmare. So I think recognising the need to be on this right from the beginning and have that legacy trail of everything you're doing. It's that classic thing, isn't it? It doesn't become a problem until it becomes a problem. It's when it comes to bite you that you suddenly think, I wish I'd given this some attention in the first place. So let's take a look at maybe some different ways to do it. And you're working with some quite big partners on this, aren't you?
Certainly, yeah. We've got kind of a variety of clients, ranging from 10 to 50 employees and way past 100. It depends on whether everyone's got different needs, but I would say the tool it's not just for large clients. It's for everyone, I would say.
It can adapt to an organisation of any level.
Certainly, and almost in some cases are better suited for a small organization that don't need a full project management system, but need something for their emails. And in terms of how we do help our clients with that, I will touch upon within the demonstration shortly, go into more detail, but one is that confidence in retrieval, making sure you know that information is there and you can get it easily and quickly. And going into quickly and finding those emails in seconds, as well as that time saves means increased in productivity. And then having that central location so everyone can access it that has permission to do so, rather than it being in separate desktop servers or computers. And as well, one thing I think finally to touch upon before we go into demonstration is our integration partners, because we appreciate, especially in the AEC industry, a lot of people already kind of have project management tools that perhaps they're not talking through emails, but maybe talking to clients through there, and they'd want kind of that one central location to make sure everyone is filing and searching from the same area. And regardless of whether you want to file your emails and project correspondence, integrating email into your project management certainly helps alleviate risk. It allows better communication and frees up time for project work, kind of those issues we were saying before.
And obviously some big, very well-known names there. Is that something that you're looking to proactively expand in the future, or is this kind of, this is our partner network and we're happy with that?
I mean, I can't speak on behalf of the company, but I know we're always looking. If people are wanting to expand, we find more clients maybe are using different project management tools, then it's certainly something we're happy to have a conversation about. I can't say if a roadmap from particular features, but it's certainly something we're open to, yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So I think we're going to have a quick look at a demo of some of the pain points we might see and how we can solve them. I'm excited about this actually, because I should be transparent with our delegates and say this is actually the first time I've seen this demo as well. So no pressure there.
Yeah, no worries. So I'm just going to end the slideshow and hop into my inbox.
Of course.
So in terms of what I want to show you, I want to briefly go into how we file and search, but to start with, I want to show you exactly what Mail Manager looks like and where it lives, and as well how it kind of communicates between what could be your server or your cloud and your Outlook. So Mail Manager is a really simple Outlook plugin. It just lives in the ribbon of your Outlook up here. it's these 3 buttons and 3 drop downs. It's not a complete overhaul of systems. I'd imagine my Outlook looks very similar to the way that yours does right now, Amy. But in terms of where your information is being stored, Mail Manager actually doesn't host any of your information itself. It would always be saved on your server or your cloud exactly where you want it to be. Now, what we do have here is what we call collections, and collections essentially are areas where we group information. So we've got ones for customers, and then of course on your right hand side you'd have the various customers and subfolders, and this would be what acts as the bridge between your storage and your Outlook as that one central location for everyone to file and save. Now, in terms of how the information actually gets there, I do have my kind of more recent or well-used projects on the left-hand side. I could perhaps drag and drop this email from my colleague Ben into the correct folder, or even right-click and file. But the problem we found with that was it was still quite a manual process. It could get to the end of the day. I've had 100 emails. I haven't had time to file any of them. It's now 7 p.m. and all I want to do is go home. But in terms of the way that Mail Manager works, it actually tackles emails as you tackle them. So if I say, open up this email from my colleague, now, it's not necessarily something I need to reply to, but it does have an attachment. It could be something I need to rely on in the future. When I click off it, what I'm going to get is I'm going to get the Mail Manager prompt. And it's this prompt that really kind of drives consistency and turns filing into a habit. So what it does is it uses quite a clever piece of AI machine learning to predict exactly where that email should be going. So it's looking at things like who I'm speaking with and where I've filed to previously before from them, as well as the subject and the body, and it's going to make a prediction. Now, in this case, it's correctly predicted it needs to go into Fitzroy Street folder. So all I need to do is click File. And what's going to happen is it can go into that Fitzroy Street folder where it's accessible by anyone working on that project. And you'll probably notice as well, it's actually been removed from my immediate inbox. And it's then been put into my drop-down folder, Fitzroy Street here. And the reason I have it set up that way is because I like to use my inbox as more of a to-do list rather than like a large filing cabinet. But of course, there is the option to leave it within there and just have a notification showing it's been filed if that's how you preferred. Now, another way that it works as well is the way it works with sent and received. We find a lot of the time when we speak to our prospective clients that actually they maybe would file their received items, but don't file their sent because they don't have a process to do so. But Mail Manager works in a very similar way, where if I was to say, reply to an email, if I reply to this one from my colleague, Ben, he's asked if I'm happy to proceed, and I'm given an instruction, perhaps something I need to rely on in the future. So when I say yes, go ahead and click send, once again, I will get that Mail Manager prompt. And in this case, it's recommended that it's going into Geneca, which is correct. So all I need to do is click send and file. It's going to send both my response as well as Ben's original email into that Geneca folder where it can be accessed by anyone working on that project. That's what I wanted to show you in terms of the filing. Now, when it comes to searching, what we would use is the Mail Manager search tool. And it's this tool that allows us not just to search our own inbox, but across the company, anything that's been filed that you have permission to search. So I'm not sure if you can see, but I've got access to about 700,000 emails down there. Now, of course, I wasn't involved in anywhere near as many as those. It's just what I can search across the company. So with the search tool, I have my kind of search box up here, which is, I suppose, my Google search. I can type in keywords and it's going to search across those 700,000. But on the left-hand side, I've got a variety of refinements. That means I can really kind of whittle down what I'm looking for and get into the details. And one thing that I find happens when I speak to project managers quite a lot is when someone needs a specific drawing, they can't remember who sent it, or when it was sent, they just tell you, oh, it's called earthwork. You think, okay, that's not a lot for me to go off. But if I type in earthwork in the search bar here, it's straight away going to search across those 700,000 and it drops it down to 16 emails. Now I know I'm looking for an attachment. So I do have this contains bar here. So I can just go contains yes. That drops it down to 2. I can see this one has the biggest score. So most likely what I'm looking for. Now I've got the option to preview it on this right-hand side, just to make sure it's what I'm looking for. But actually, if I realize, okay, brilliant, I can see that sheet's attached, I can open it up. And what that will do is it will open it up in its original Outlook format. And from there, I'm able to forward it on to that colleague or client, or even just open the PDF. And as you can probably see, it's an email that I wasn't involved in, but still one that I'm able to search and reply to. Now, I appreciate that's maybe a little bit more of a needle in a haystack kind of search, but one to touch upon what we were discussing earlier, when people leave a company and perhaps a project reopens after a few years and you need to get put a piece of material, even a specific price, just so you can go back and know exactly what's happening. And we had that a while ago. We had an account manager called Georgina. And when Georgina left the business, she was account manager for Gensler, one of our larger architecture firms. And we need to find out exactly what price she'd been quoting Gensler, so we didn't get our wires crossed and the project could continue. So when I go into the Gensler folder, it's only going to bring up emails that have been filed into this folder. So it's about 1,300 emails. Again, far too many for me to scroll through. But what I have this really helpful between bar here. When I type in Georgina's name, it's only going to bring up conversations that have happened between Georgina in that Gensler folder. So that drops it down to 34, but I know I'm looking for an invoice. So I can just type in invoice here, and I can go use that helpful attachment button again. Contains, I can see it drops it down to 2. This one has the biggest score. See attached is both the confirmation and the invoice. So I've got that information, but I also have the ability to scroll through the conversation before that final email. So I'm completely up to date with what's been going on, despite the fact that that project ended 2 years ago and Georgina is no longer working at the company.
And that's, if you don't mind me jumping in, Liam, I think that is a really significant feature, particularly in the current climate, because as we know, the past 18 months, things have become very uncertain. I've certainly had a few instances of people moving on very, very suddenly. Life is unpredictable at the moment. So it's always been an issue, but I would say it's becoming even more of an issue again, as we move into this world of hybrid and remote working models, and of people really thinking about their career choices and perhaps making unexpected choices and making them more quickly than you usually would.
Certainly, exactly. Yeah, that is one thing we're noticing at the moment. And even with summer holidays just coming past, people being away, you need to find that information quickly. With certain clients, you can't wait a week, 2 weeks before you get back to them. You need to know that information now and get back to them straight away.
Well, and I think there's a growing recognition as well amongst people that, holiday time off should be respected. We shouldn't be expecting to be interrupted by work queries when we are resting, enjoying family life, it's a weekend or whatever. And I can see this kind of tool and this kind of mechanism playing a very useful role in that.
Certainly, I couldn't agree more. And that's what I wanted to show you in terms of the filing and the search. I believe we're going to finalize with a Q&A. Am I right in saying that?
That's right, yeah. But before we do, just a couple of questions of my own, if you don't mind, that have just sprung to mind whilst we're looking at that demo. I mean, it's a really simple tool from what I can see. Does it operate on a kind of plug and play basis? So you literally just install it into the system and it integrates with in the same way that something like Teams would?
Exactly, yeah. It's a simple Outlook plugin, so it would
Yeah.
it would integrate from there.
What about implications in terms of account management, training, onboarding people? I mean, is it your expectation that it's intuitive and people just kind of go with it, or are there training resources available? Do you get an account manager with mail manager? What kind of service can you expect in terms of onboarding and getting up and running?
Of course. So when it comes to onboarding, we hope to have everyone ready to go within 2 hours. We would essentially push it out from one machine, and then everyone would have all of the locations and files that they've created from there. But we understand that with systems, some people adopt technology really quickly. Some people take a bit longer. So we do offer training over the kind of first 30 days to allow people to be fully comfortable with the system while it's being installed. And then, of course, we offer quite regular sessions on top of that. So perhaps if someone was away and missed the specific session with their team, they can join others to make sure they know. And we've got a variety of video features online as well. And as you mentioned, you would get assigned your own account manager and sign in with a manager as well. So you've always got that first port of call for anything you may need.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. Well, as you rightly say, let's take a few moments at the end of this session to run through some questions that have been coming in. Let's start by dealing with a question from one of our delegates who quite rightly and meticulously has asked us if we have any links to support the statement at the beginning of the session that 80% of project managers spend half their time on rework. I don't have it to hand right now. From memory, it's either from PMI's annual report or it's from Wellington's annual report, the State of Strategy Execution. However, I am making a note of the name of that delegate and we will find the link after the webinar and we'll send it through to you. Very well recognised statistic. I just need to remind myself of which publication it comes from. Let's have a look at the next question, one that's coming through from a delegate. Now, our project communications are a mess. We sympathise entirely, and there are emails all over the place. Can Mail Manager help address legacy emails, or does it only work on emails sent and received from when it's implemented? That's a great question, actually. So, you know, how much can it help you to actually clear up a mess that's already there, or are you just starting from the day you installed it?
No, it's a great question. So no, it wouldn't be a case of just starting from the day that you first installed it. What a lot of our clients like to do is they essentially would take all of the emails prior to Mail Manager. They would create a pre-Mail Manager folder and then put that on their server or cloud, wherever they would like to link it to. And that then gives you the ability to search across those emails using the search tool. Now, of course, if you already had a folder structure within Outlook, you'd also be able to highlight those and right click and just file those in a location you've created. So there's many methods to actually filing emails from the past. So it's not just a case of starting new.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. A couple more coming in as we speak. What happens with duplicate emails? That occurred to me as well, actually. How does Mail Manager handle that particularly irritating scenario?
That's the one that gets asked a lot. So every email that you receive actually gets given a unique timestamp. So if you had 5 people working on a project at the same time, they're all getting CC'd into that email and they all file it into the same location. What Mail Manager will actually do, due to that specific timestamp, is going to recognize that 4 of those are copies. We'll delete those 4 and just keep the 1. So when it comes to deduplication, it's a very simple process that's automated.
Okay, and actually coming through from the same delegate, it's a follow-up question, I think. Does Mail Manager store data? Now, I'm imagining that by this this delegate is talking about any kind of data, really, from you know, Excel spreadsheets up to much more sophisticated data. So what's the scenario there?
So I'm assuming they're meaning when you're filing. So any attachment with an email, it will be saved in Mail Manager. We understand the importance of needing to have the attachment with the date, just in case you need to come back and say, when was this drawing sent? So it will store that as well, yes. But that, of course, will be stored on your cloud or your server. It wouldn't be us ourselves storing it. It would always be where you need it to be rather than your data.
Sure. Okay. Here's one coming in that is a little bit more on the sort of behavioural side than on the system itself. And I'm going to paraphrase it a bit. It's to do with, and I'm putting myself in this bracket, so I sympathise entirely. We've obviously got this situation where we've got Gen Z coming into the workplace, and for Gen Z, you know, technology is incredibly intuitive. I've seen my daughter pick up the most sophisticated technology all on her own, and we've got, shall we say, the slightly more senior workforce, myself included, who perhaps, although we went through the coalface of watching technology be developed, so you know, we're very familiar with some of the problems, we perhaps might find it harder to adapt to being asked to use a new system like this. I can see how it integrates with Outlook and all that kind of thing, but looking at this delegate's question, I think what they're trying to get to, Liam, is whether you have any advice or any experience of particularly coming to the sponsorship and exec side, which will tend to be in an older age bracket. How do you find adoption rates are in that kind of demographic? Do people struggle a bit more, or is this a stereotype we're inventing that doesn't really exist?
When it comes to Mail Manager, it's not really a case of struggling, I suppose, because it is a simple system. It does offer that prediction when it comes to the prompt, so it's not a case of having to search through. Sometimes people will, of course, be a bit worried at the start. You know, employing any kind of new system can be a bit worrying, but because we offer the training, we make sure that everyone is comfortable. It is certainly something we don't notice once we've gone past implementation. People get very comfortable with the system very quickly, and as I said, it's that simplicity really, I think, is the key there, because it's not a whole project management system. It is just for your emails, and it is an Outlook plugin. It doesn't confuse things any more than they need to.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. I think we've probably got time for just 2 more before we wrap up. Let's have a quick look here. Okay, yeah. So somebody is asking about access to emails. Is there a facility to make sure that people, specific people, only have access to specific emails? I imagine confidentiality is the driver behind this one.
Certainly, yeah. So what we would do is we can show you how to set up permissions within your folder structure. So when you create a new folder, if it was, for example, an HR folder that you only wanted the execs and your HR to be seeing, you'd create permissions so only they have the availability to both file into and actually view the emails in there. So it's very simple to set up.
Brilliant, great. And I think just one more that we've got time for, and this is actually quite an appropriate one to end on. How do we know it will work for our business? Do you have a trial available? Is there some kind of try before you buy type scenario?
Certainly. So what I'd always recommend, if you haven't seen the product before, it is getting similar to a demonstration we've done today, but it will be tailored to your company. So we can ask questions just to make sure that it would suit your business and work within your environment. From there, if perhaps we felt it was something that would work and you wanted to go further, we do offer 2-week free trials. So you can really see how it works within your environment before making a final decision.
Okay, perfect. Well, that's flown by. I think that's probably about all we've got time for, bar just wrapping up and letting you guys know how to find out a bit more. So the first thing I should do is say thank you very much, Liam, for making the time to join us again. And more importantly, thank you, our delegates, for taking the time to join us today. I do hope you've managed to get a bite to eat and a bit of a rest and reflection time during your lunch break with us today. If you have specific queries or you're interested in finding out more, you can email sales@mailmanager.com. Excuse me. And of course, do feel free, I would say, Liam, to follow Mail Manager on all of their social media channels. I've been on the Mail Manager website. There are lots and lots of rich resources, webinars, thought leadership papers, blogs, ebooks, that kind of thing. So if you're dealing with these communication pain points, connect with them on LinkedIn, on Facebook, etc. Visit the website, explore the resources, and of course I'm always very happy to connect with you guys as well as our readership. You're very welcome to search me on LinkedIn directly and also to follow the magazine PM Today. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook and Twitter, so do feel free to follow us that way. And just to confirm that the website, as you will have guessed, is www.mailmanager.com. Do encourage you to have a look at their resources section. I certainly found it very thought-provoking. I think all that remains is for me to say, Liam, it's been a real pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you for having me.
And thank you to our delegates for taking the time. Look out for more PM Today webinars coming soon. And I don't think there's anything else to say. Great session. Thanks for joining us. And I'm going to say this webinar is now closed. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks again.